It's really important to show up. Take the time from your life and show, that you care about the community and be there. And, so when the workers were participating in actions to bring pressure on a poultry market owner who owed her workers wages, the workers were going out with picket signs, and I went with them too. And in that way, I felt nervous. You do kind of feel exposed. You're in this environment that's very different from, some of the other things that I had done. So when we had these meetings, everybody on the project was really experienced in doing community research. But there's this dynamic. When you're in a professional culture, you're used to participating in meetings and trying to get in your word, and then on top of all that, we're conducting all of these in English. And so the other two staff from the Chinese Progressive Association were interpreting for the non-English speaking staff member. And so they're not fully able to participate. And then everything's happening so fast, people are talking over each other, that for the non-English speaking staff member, it was hard for her to sort of get a word in edgewise. We did reflect on this, and people noticed it. Then we started to conduct the meetings in Chinese, and then all the English speakers wore the headsets with simultaneous interpretation. The native English speakers were quieter, and that changed the dynamics a lot, but the workers were still quiet. In terms of cultural humility, we were really challenged to think, I think, a little bit more deeply about what culture is and how it doesn't mean thinking about a list of traits that you can ascribe to people, but that it's actually, that involves you and your assumptions and, how you project, your assumptions onto somebody else, and then versus what is their actual experience and who they actually are.
I first heard about cultural humility when I was a graduate student in the master's program here at San Francisco State, but I feel like I first understood cultural humility as a concept a lot earlier in my life. It came from a place of invisibility, a place of kind of suppressing who I was as a woman of color, and now has completely transformed as an educator, realizing who I am, where I stand in the classroom, what my privilege is, but also what my voice means in the world and what it means as an educator. It came from trying to fit in, to do whatever I could to be Indian at home and not out in the world, and not express that. And it's become this marker of identity that I knew was always there, that I could never really express growing up. And now it's saying who that person is and acknowledging both my own power and privilege in I gotta check myself kind of way. In the same respect, it's also saying I am a woman of color, I have something important to say, and here I am.
I think as long as power and privilege exists in society, we will always be struggling with being too humble as women of color, as women who come from working class backgrounds, as women who come from low income backgrounds or under-resourced backgrounds, right? As long as there's power and privilege in society, I know I will always be struggling with that, and I struggle with that on a daily basis.
I examined SF State here to see how inclusive our current policies and programming are toward transgender students.
And I was just reflecting about how it's actually very relevant to the topic this evening of cultural humility, because we're talking about like transgender culture or queer culture at SF State and how it's respected or not,
Right.
and how like the institution can be culturally relevant or humble or respectful of the experiences of trans folks when they come to this place.
The health educators that I work with are all transgender females. And literally the second day of my job, I walked into a meeting and it was a community advisory board all transgender females. And I was so uncomfortable, but at the same time, they made me feel so comfortable. They started asking me questions like, they noticed, and they were like, so where are you from, And I was like, I'm Iranian. Oh, we know this Middle Eastern transgender girl. Do you know her? And I was like, no. So my definition of cultural humility is to be open to learning all the time. So what I want from you guys is to go around, introduce yourself, and tell us what cultural humility means to you.
I first became passionate about cultural humility. As an undergraduate student, I was interning with an organization, and they were holding a cultural competency training for Pacific Islanders and working with Pacific Islander communities. And as a biracial Pacific Islander woman, I was really excited and anxious to attend the training and to really learn about the material that was going to be sort of discussed and how others were going to learn, and myself included, about Pacific Islander culture and working with Pacific Islanders around health issues that were important to the community. And I think after attending the training, I realized that there was a sense of achievement and completion for those who participated. And I then was introduced to cultural humility as an undergraduate student in a class, just so happened around the same time. And I realized that a sense of achievement and accomplishment and competence and understanding sort of limits your learning.
I can't really tell you what cultural humility means to me. I feel like I practice it and that's how I know. But one thing that I think about or that I can practice is cultural humility es poder hablar el idioma en el que me puedo expresar mejor, y el idioma donde encuentro palabras de poder contarle a alguien exactamente cómo me estoy sintiendo.
Coming from a background in science and coming into public health and not ever hearing cultural humility in the sciences was very telling for me, because culture is not something that's emphasized. It's not something that's talked about in a relevant way. There have always been very clear barriers present for particular minorities in science. You can see it when you're in the science classes. You can see it when you're in study groups. You can see it when you're looking at your professors. And I'm not just talking about racial minorities. I'm talking about a lot of underrepresented minorities in the sciences, like their race is a factor, but gender, sexual orientation.
I learned cultural humility through two places. By my own culture, which being Cambodian, Southeast Asian, not knowing anything about it, my folks roasting me about not speaking well, and then after going to college and learning about it in anthropology and interviewing my parents about their experience, it opened my eyes.
One of the things that I have learned in the past couple of years, I want to say, is just listening to what I'm saying. And I mean, like, seriously listening to what I'm saying. And one of the things that I have learned to listen to is when I say, I believe this, I do this. And listen how that is very different from the we. We, I hear it a lot in the news. We Americans, right? Like we, who is the we speaking about? It's to think about and listen to when we use the I, the we, the you.
Growing up, I was like always interested in culture and other religions and just really learning about things from other backgrounds. And so I just figured that made me culturally humble because I had an interest. And so after studying a year in West Africa, I came back like, oh my God, I don't know anything. I don't know anything about Black people. I don't know anything about African. I mean, it just like shook my world.